So it's 4 o'clock, so I will start. I'm glad to see so many people here. I hope I'll be able to give you something. And before we start, let me introduce myself. My name is Jarek Kolar, and I am currently senior level designer at 2K Czech. I started doing games like 20 years ago as a designer and artist. Some time ago, I was working on some games set in Vietnam, and I joined Mafia team in 2008 as a help for management and design. And right now, I'm just doing my level design stuff. So, you came here to see and hear the truth about development of Mafia 2. So, what I will give you today. We'll start with very brief introduction of how the development went, and then I will focus on just few areas because I just can't cover every day and year of the development here on this 50-minute session. Bear in mind that I will be quite subjective in my findings and resolutions, so my colleagues may not agree with me. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think it will be interesting to hear my take on the whole thing. So, let's start. Long time ago, we started working on the story of Mafia 2. It was at the time when Mafia 1 was finished, and the rest of the team was doing something else. The year later, the small team was already working on the game, doing prototypes, doing assets. And with the new consoles on the doorsteps, it was decided that the game should be released on them. This switch brought a lot of work, a lot of difficulties. And we were kind of struggling to put this game together. So in 2008, the company was acquired by 2K with the goal to really help the team focus on just Mafia 2, make it finished, make it great. So in 2009, we've been in full production, and 2010, January, we managed to hit beta version of the game. We finished everything. We were just optimizing, finishing, closing. And in August, the game was released on all 3 major platforms. So, this was very brief, but this is just for you to understand the context of these details which I'm going to give you now. So, we should continue. And these details, I selected some few topics which I will give you some more details. I will talk about how the decision to change the platforms affected the development. I will tell you some insight about the design processes in 2K during Mafia 2. And also I will speak about our experience with expanding the team. So, first thing. So the original goal of the development was to do the game fast. Fast after the sequel, do it on consoles, and to do this, it was decided that we will license a technology, a proven technology. So imagine that in 2004, we had this team working on the game, doing the prototypes, doing the assets, and everything was going great. And then the company which we were supposed to license the engine was sold. And then we also realized that the game is quite big and we probably won't make it for the current generation. So this was really a scary moment. And we decided to switch to the next generation with the game. So we have more time and more comfort to really work on the game, make it finished, make it great. But this decision obviously brought some consequences. So the consequence was that we decided to build our own technology, almost from scratch, because we didn't want to be dependent on some company which will be eventually sold or whatever. Back then it were quite wild times. We also were supposed to do the prototyping because the technology would be so different. And obviously, next gen means always much more details in graphics and assets in general. So we had to redo them all, although they were almost finished. What we didn't anticipate it was that the next gen means also increased detail in the technology, in the gameplay mechanics. So if we take a look what our company had history with, in 1999 we developed Hidden and Dangerous on its own engine with just one coder on board. In 2002 we did Mafia 1, and there were about 10 programmers working on the game. In 2003, simple first-person shooter Viet Cong was done with just 5 programmers, also on its own engine. And then we were doing this Mafia 2, and this was really different because the demand was quite high, and we end up with 40 programmers working on it, but it was still not enough. Another problem which we faced was the time. So the technology was started about 2004 as a backup technology for Illusion Softworks back then. And as I said earlier, we started the decision to do Mafia 2 with this engine was done in 2005. But it took really some time before we managed to have some gameplay in the game. And it took us almost till the end of the development to really finish all the features to make things complete. We were trying to set the priorities, and sometimes it wasn't very good. The main focus all the time was on visual aspect. It was very positive because everyone, the team, the investors, the publishing, they can see the great graphics, the beautiful visuals, and it was very good for their faith and motivation. But the downside of it was that we spent just too many resources on doing the visual aspects, and we were lacking these for the other parts. So there were a lot of things which were delivered just too late, and just to name few, the player control and animation, we had some code which was very old, and we decided late to just change it to make it next gen, and it brought a lot of time. It needed a lot of time, so the animations, the player control, and also the AI was held back by this. Also, the city traffic and car control, which was quite important thing in the game, took some time, and it was delivered almost on the end of the development. And we had also a very bad experience with load and save because we just haven't took care about it, and it kicked us back in the end. And there were a lot of other things, but these were just the most difficult. So on the end, it was tough, but we made it. And as a reward for this, we now have the experience of doing the technology, and we have also the engine. So if I would give you some advices, though I'm not an engineer, so this will be more from a production perspective. What I would tell you is that if you decide to do your technology, you have to really know that it takes time, and I think it takes even more time now. Another thing which you really need to do is to be honest and realistic with your estimates. Because a lot of time we've been lying to ourselves, telling that this thing will be done in so-and-so days and weeks, and it was much more difficult. So it was really difficult for the decision-making and for the overall progress. Another important aspect is that if you are building your own technology, you have to make sure that the core functionality, the foundation of it, is done right, like with all the coding standards, clean, no like weird code and so, because this is something which will hold your whole project. On the other hand, you really need to do the prototyping of the gameplay very soon. So no matter how you will do it, how dirty it will be, you should do it to prove your ideas and so on. And the last thing about technology is that the technology is not just the engine which renders the stuff and gives the player the game, but it's also the tools. And the tools are really important right now, and even in the future they will be even more important, because as the games now, they need so many things to be done, a lot of assets, a lot of things. The tools are really important for making this happen. They really save time. So this is the next topic. So first of all, there is always this like clash between story and gameplay, or it's believed to be there. And Mafia wasn't different. Obviously, Mafia 2 and the whole franchise, it's a very narrative-driven game. So the story really directs the gameplay. We are really keen on delivering player the narrative experience, and we are doing a lot of things to achieve it. But sometimes there is a clash between these narrative intentions and the open world structure. Sometimes there is a clash between the story and the gameplay. But what was more difficult for us was the fact that the story was written in isolation. It was written before the game, before the gameplay was prototyped, and it was also written outside of the team. So this brought us a lot of problems, and just to give you an idea what I mean by story, it's mainly the script. So the script for Mafia 2 was, on the end, like quite big, and it was basically describing all the dialogue, all the events, all the important things, and also some gameplay things. And next to it, it was just half of the voices which we were doing for the game. The other half was just generic speech, some level speech, things like this. So it was a really big amount of work as well. So this was the story, and we were also doing the gameplay mechanics. As I said, they were done in isolation, and when I joined the project, I was really amazed by so many documents, and basically the guys, the designers, they have created our internal Wikipedia containing all the topics, linking them, the designs, the level designs and everything. It was amazing. The problem, though, was that these were done on paper. Because we had these problems with technology, there was not many opportunities to test these designs and ideas in the game, which was really a bad thing, and we really underestimated the development of these gameplay mechanics, because when the programmers moved into making these, they were like going through these piles of papers, and they were trying to build the code, but sometimes there were some problems, issues, the things were not working together correctly, so we were like changing these designs. And although in the beginning the intention was really great, to make it happen, it took us a lot of time. Also, we had really high expectations on all the things in the game. Not only the visual aspect and the animations, but also the gameplay mechanics. So we really wanted to have the mechanics just perfect. The consequence of this was that it obviously took more time to develop, and also these complicated features, sometimes they were difficult to use in the game for us designers, and sometimes we had ideas, but it just wasn't possible to make them on time. So on the end, we had, if I would summarize it, we had some main gameplay mechanics which we based our challenge and the gameplay experience on. It was shooting and driving. And then we had other mechanics which were also important, but not so much. We really didn't try to give challenge to player in these. And these were our building blocks for doing the game. The problem was that when we were doing the levels early, the gameplay mechanics were not there. So basically it was not possible to play the levels, to test them, to see how it would work. So we were just imagining things, we were just doing it on paper, and when things starts to appear in the game, it still was not all the systems were functional, so we were doing some workarounds with scripting to be able to see how the experience will look like. And also it was not possible to do anything in the city because the cars and traffic, it went just too early, too late in the development. So basically, what we were focusing on was the story aspect and the visual aspect of the levels. And the plan was that the gameplay will be injected after the thing, that the gameplay mechanics will be there. And when it was there, it was at the time when we were also quite deep in the production. So as a designers, we were really forced to fit the gameplay into the existing levels. The geometry was done. We were trying to place our gameplay there. The cutscenes were motion captured. They were sometimes even recorded, so we had to fit our gameplay with these things. And sometimes the gameplay didn't work, so we had to change stuff. So we had to ask the artist to add another corridor or remove some wall. And it was really frustrating for them because they already have the texture lightened, and also the animators, they were not happy if they have to go to motion capture and do some cutscenes again. So it was quite uneasy to find the balance between good gameplay and having the assets already there. To just give you an idea how we were progressing at this stage, this is an example of a document which contains the screenplay of a level. You can see there is a picture taken from the engine, and the designer just drew some characters, some things to just describe the flow of the level. There are some comments written below the pictures. So basically, the artist, when they are asked to do some changes, like give me the destructible door or do me the something, they were understanding what we want from them, and the same for the animators. If you want to create some animations or some sequence, this was the way how we communicated these things, because just the asset list in XLS, it's just not enough. Also, for some more difficult levels, we were doing so-called level videos, where basically some simple walkthrough, which was already available in the engine with the level, we recorded it, so it was obvious how the flow works, what are the distances which player needs to travel, and so. And then we put in some video editing tool some little signs and messages, like here there will be explosion, here the character will say something, and it was even more descriptive than this level screenplay. What we were really trying to do with the game is to have it really polished. We literally took care of every minute of the game. So what I described was how the designers were treating the flow of the game. So they were designers in collaboration with producers. They were really sitting down, tweaking these things, communicating with the rest of the team. When the levels become sort of playable, it went to testers, and they were reporting some issues. They were making sure that it's working. Then we had also guys from the publishing and external consultants with a lot of experience, which gave us feedback. They had some distance from the game, so they were able to spot things which we were just not seeing anymore. And when we iterate the levels into phase where we were satisfied with them, we started focus testing. We had focus testing running in our studio. We had some laboratory built where basically people from the street were playing the game and Designers were just behind the glass, watching them, watching their reactions, watching their problems during some situations, writing comments, and then we were discussing with these guys. And also we had external focus testing, which happened in America, because as we have learned today from Don, the American audience is quite difficult and different from the European ones. So we had these reports from America being sent after every build which we sent, and this lasted over half a year. So, and the way how we tracked the flow of the game, there is one example, one document, which is game flow document. As you can see, this in Excel, every line is like a beat or sequence in the game, and it describes what happens there. There are non-interactive sequences there, and also the gameplay sequences. And there are a lot of fields over there which are hidden, but here you can see just the times. And with this, properly updated every time we change, we could get something like this, which is the flow of of the whole game. There are the chapters of the game, and as you can see, there is a time, how much it takes, and also you can see from which elements it's consisting. And we were also able to look into detail of the individual chapters. So this is some chapter later in the game. And again, you see the portions of sequences and what they were. And sometimes we saw that there are some issues, so we injected some subquests into the main storyline. And we really tried to pace the game so it flows well. The real turning point in a level design approach was the DLC, which we worked on after finishing the main game. The difference was that at the time, all the features were working, and we were able to use the city as well. So we could really stick to the classical level design process, like from the books. So first, we were working on the concept, just discussing the story and the gameplay, how it should look like. When we were happy with this stage, we moved to another one, which was paper design, and design the space on paper and the game flow. Then, when we were satisfied with this, we moved to the next stage, which was the prototyping. We did the sketch of the level in 3D, scripted a little bit, so it's playable, put the AI and things there, and we started playing it and also iterating it. Because it was just in this sketch form, it was really efficient to do modifications and iterations of this. So we could do a lot of runs before we were really satisfied with this level. And then, after we said it's okay, this went to production. So basically the artists were doing the nice textures and details, and the animators were doing the cutscenes. So really, after all those years where we were struggling with things, this was the turning point in the level design, and this is the thing, this is the way how I believe it should be done. So to give you some practical advices from what I've learned during Mafia 2, is in a game design, my first advice is that you should really prototype everything, and ideally before you start your levels. Sometimes it's not possible, sometimes you will need to do the gameplay together with levels, but it's really important that you will have it prototyped. Another advice which I would like to give you is that for the interactivity, for the freedom for the player, it's much more efficient to use systems, which your coders will do. You will put some rules, you will put some systems together, and then you will give it to player in the code. Because if you are scripting the things, it's maybe easier, faster to do, but the experience is linear. And obviously, my last advice for gameplay mechanics is that you need to have enough of them. So if you are doing a game where you want to tell a story, for example, and you want to have many things to be available for the player, you really need to have these mechanics. Because if you don't, you will end up doing things in cutscenes, and this is not so good. So, and for level design, my advice is quite similar. You have to prototype everything. And I would advise you to prototype it before the production starts. I also strongly advise you to cooperate with artists and animators. And I'm not saying that these guys should dictate you how the gameplay should be done, but they have quite a good experience and expertise in their field, so they can help you with the space, with the pacing, with the cinematic moments in your levels. So you really should use this cooperation. Also, if your game is supposed to contain a story, I would strongly advise you to develop the story together with the levels, because if you develop it separately, you will have a lot of problems. And also, if someone will ask you whether it's more important to have in the game the story or what's the most important element, whether it's the gameplay or the story, my answer is that it's the experience of the player, because this is what stands above gameplay and story itself. So this was my bit about the design. And we are about to go to the last point of my presentation, which is the team. So back then, the size of the team was about 20 guys, and they were structured by disciplines, which I mean, they were a team of coders, artists, animators, and designers. Obviously, very talented guys, hardworking, and because they were just sitting in one room, working together, they were quite effective. Then, with this next-gen thing, the team started to grow. And obviously, the guys were still talented, but because there was so many of them, they become disconnected. And the work become less effective. So as we were expanding the amount of people, we were also trying to improve our management, or build one, because there was no middle management at the time. The problem we had was that in Czech Republic, really, there isn't much industry veterans, which we could just simply employ easily. So we were trying to take our managers from the team. So the choice which we made was to pick the best experts from their fields, like best artist, best animator, best programmer, and make them leaders. They were great experts, but they were just new to the management. So it took them some time to get there. And to help this process, we started employing development managers. They were people which had no practical experience in game development, but they were educated in management stuff, so they were supposed to do the scheduling and planning and so on. But if you imagine this, we had quite a lot of people, and there were these leaders which were really overwhelmed by work, because they were still needed in their fields to give their judgments about stuff. And they were supposed to do the management of people and so. So they didn't have time to focus on details and to focus on many things. Also, these development managers, they were kind of in difficult position because they don't have the experience. They were not able to do the estimates of the time work. It was difficult for them to set the priorities. They always had to consult with the leaders, and because the leaders were overwhelmed, sometimes the planners, they were just helpless. And it led to the fact that sometimes the people were just, the plans were not right, or there were some missing things. So the people were just doing some things without knowing really what to do. So again, this was difficult. To solve this, there are, you can think of many ideas. And we were also thinking about some solutions. As you can see, some of them, they may bring some results, some of them probably not so effective. But the thing which really helped us was to change the structure of the team. So instead of focusing the individual teams according to their disciplines, we let the teams focus on topics and have clear goals there. So that we had teams with with mixed disciplines, and they were focused on topics. So we had city team, which goal was to create the city experience, the shops, the civilians. We had the mission team, which goal was to create the action levels. We got the AI teams. They were mainly programmers, but also designers and animators doing the artificial intelligence. We had player team, which they had a task to do the player control and also the animation engine. We had a traffic team. They were working on the control of the car, the traffic of cars in the city, driver AI, and these things. And then obviously we had people doing the production of art assets, guys working on the cutscenes. We had guys doing the engine itself, like the rendering, the sound things, and all the technological stuff. We had a team of people, they were dedicated to the tools. And at the time, we also had a team of testers internally, which were not testing only the gameplay, but they were also testing the achievements of all these teams. So basically, they were testing the new version of the editor, they were testing new version of some AI feature, and so on. So this really helped us. So basically, with this structure, we managed to go up with the amount of people, and it reached its peak in 2009 at the size of 150. And because people, they had more ownership and responsibility within these small teams, they were more autonomous. They were basically just more effective than previously. So if I would illustrate the status of the team by this little picture, I think you can see how we evolved during the Mafia 2 development, and just we are right now somewhere here. We have not stopped with shipping Mafia 2. So my advice is for team management is that, first of all, before you think about anything, you need to know what you are doing. You need to have a clear plan, clear goal. What is it what you need from your people? Also, you need to know how this is supposed to be done. And also, you need to give them tools so they are able to do it. These are the main things which you need to resolve before you discuss or think about some management strategies and so. Our experience was that having too many people which you don't have really tools to manage, it's not so effective as having these small teams which can work autonomously. So this was our experience during Mafia 2, and I think it was really, it was quite effective on the end. So I'm coming to a conclusion of this speech. So it was a very long development, 8 years. I think it's quite a lot of time, and there were obviously a lot of problems. But I would say the main problems were, first, the lack of realism and honesty and criticism which we had, like all of us in the team, which was really bad for doing the plans and doing the decisions, because we were deceiving ourselves all the time, saying like, yes, we just finished this and that, and then it will be finished, we will ship the game, everything will be all right. So if we would like be more realistic with our thing, we could have planned more things more thoroughly, and it would be easier for us. And also, what was really difficult for us, the fact that most of the team members, it was their first project. And as I said, we also had a lot of difficulties with growing up the management, starting the structure of the team and so. So with the experience we have now, I think the development would be much easier. So although it took so long, we always had people believing in the thing. The development team, they were hardworking from the very beginning till the end. And I think the reasons were the franchise, the theme of the game, the visual beauty of it, and also the feel, the cinematic feel that the game had from early on. So I think this was really good for the motivation of the team, but also for the investors, the publishers. So I think it's quite good to have something like this because it keeps you going and you overcome all the obstacles. So after all, after this long path, we were quite successful. We changed the team, the practices, the processes, and as a proof of these changes, after doing alpha version in 2009, we planned our thing, the beta and the master, and we were able to hit these dates on time. So this was really a good achievement for us. Also, what was quite a success was the submission to the console manufacturers, which is, for those of us who've done it already, is quite difficult because they keep giving you back these things and these versions. We managed to submit on the first attempt, which was almost unbelievable. And then we also shipped the game, which was, for most of us, almost a miracle. We managed to ship simultaneously on all 3 platforms, and the game was localized, fully localized, including the voices in 8 languages during the ship date. So it was quite a big achievement. And also the DLC, which come after, we managed to plan it, and the budget was done, and we managed to stick to these things. So I think it was a very good proof of how the company changed. So if I look back on Mafia 2, it was really a big, enormous project, very ambitious project, and there were many challenges. Many of them were just underestimated before things really went wrong. But on the end, we made it, and we were quite proud of what we achieved. And as a conclusion of this, we really learned a lot of things, which was probably the most valuable thing. And now we can move on and do even greater games than we had with Mafia 2. So this is what I wanted to say. And now you should be able to go through questions, because I really fly through the presentation quite fast. But now we should have a time to discuss things, if someone has a question.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm wondering, was there a specific trigger which caused you to basically evaluate the process when you weren't finished with the game yet? Usually, I'd expect people to struggle through, finish a game, and then evaluate. So it's good that you evaluated early, but was there a specific trigger for it?
Well, I think the trigger was the time. Your question is about when we started evaluating our processes. The problem was that we really were struggling with making the game happen. And that's why we sit down and we evaluated our things. We thought about how to make it better. The main thing was after the acquisition, because 2K really sent a lot of people which were experts in their fields, and they were looking onto our processes and helping us with the thing. So this was the major changes probably happened in 2008 during this acquisition.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. Once you changed to different teams, did you have any issues with the integration of the features between the teams? When someone finished something, how did you make it into the mainstream of the game?
Yeah, so the question was how we were able to put together the pieces, the results of these teams. So there were several things which we needed to have. One was the build system, which was basically a pipeline which allowed us to put all the assets and all the code things together and create build automatically. So once we had these things, we were able to have several branches of the game. Basically all the teams, or not all the teams, but the teams which were making a lot of changes, they were working on separate branch. and they were working on it individually before, without breaking the game for the others. Because obviously, if an AI team would make a feature which is awesome and changing everything, and sometimes there is a bug, then if it's submitted to everyone's version, the people won't be very happy. So we had to have these different branches where the coders, these mini teams, were working on the feature. And once the feature was finished, or once the version was stable enough, we started to merge these things together with some other branches, and then it appeared also on the other branches. I can't really describe you details of this process because I'm not a technical guy, but in principles it was like this. Any more questions? Oh, okay. So thank you for your attention. And if you have some questions...
One more?
One more? Yes, sorry.
How did the use of multiple platforms influence the development process? Did you start developing on one particular platform and then maybe at a certain point in development started working on other platforms, or did you develop for all three at once?
Yes, so the question was whether we started working on some specific platform or all of them. So what we did was that originally we were working on PC, obviously, it's the easiest thing. But if you're gonna aim for consoles, it's quite wise to focus on the consoles. So we picked one platform which became the main platform for us, and we tried to do everything for this platform. We picked Xbox because it was more convenient for us. And all the designers, artists, they start to review their things on this platform. I wish we picked PlayStation because it would be more challenging for us because the difference between PlayStation and PC is bigger. And it's always better to do the most challenging thing on the start. But we picked the Xbox, and then after the features were working there, we started porting it back to PC and to PlayStation. So this was the way how we did it, yeah. So maybe someone has some more questions? Because we are closing the shop. Okay. So I hope I gave you some insights into the process of developing Mafia 2. I hope you may find it inspirational. I hope maybe you will do some, it will help you do some decisions in your own development. And thank you for your attention, and bye.